I'll call the meeting to order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sarah, can you read our mission statement?
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. First item is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Thank you. A motion by Jeff and a second by Sarah Runcie to approve the agenda. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And the agenda is approved. Next item is the public forum. Is there anybody from the public want to approach the board? Seeing none. Move on to item number 6, our presentation, our audit review. Welcome, Tamara.
Hello.
And Liana.
I'm just here.
Support.
Yes. My support person.
One of these?
There's an on and off switch on the side.
Maybe it's off. Probably doesn't help. Oh, buzzed. Okay,
On the front, on the top.
the top. Okay, sounds good. When I don't do it right the first 3 times. All right, so my name is Tamara Deitz. I'm with Hoffman and Bropes, and I'm here to present the audit report for Marshall Public Schools for the year ended June 30th, 2025. The district received an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion for the June 30th, 25 audit report. We do have a single audit as well, and that will be wrapping up here. The OMB was part of the government shutdown, and they didn't release their single audit compliance guide in time. And so those are delayed, and the state knows that, so we'll have a separate single audit piece of it at some point. Normally, they'd been released at the same time, so this year we just had a little extra fun. The top, this one? Sorry.
It probably doesn't, it's probably the
There we go. Thank you. All right, to start out, we'll take a look at some of the financial highlights for fiscal year 2025. As the district completed the year, its governmental funds, which are your general, food service, community service, building construction, and debt service funds, those reported an increase of approximately $986,000 in their combined fund balance, bringing the balance at year end to about $15.1 million. That was mostly due to an increase in the general fund, food service fund, and debt service fund, partially offset by a small transfer out to close out the building construction fund. Of that $986,000 increase, about half of that was contributed to by the debt service fund. The general fund, excluding your transportation and operating capital activities, that fund balance increased about $212,000 to just over $8 million. That total fund balance amounts to 19.7% of your annual district expenditures, which exceeds your district's fund balance goal of a minimum of 8%. During the year, the district completed and placed into service the renovation of the middle school theater. The total cost of that project was about $657,000 and was funded through the general fund as part of the approved long-term facility maintenance budget. The district entered into 2 right-of-use lease arrangements during the fiscal year. One agreement was for athletic space through the Board of Trustees of Minnesota State Colleges and Universities on behalf of Southwest Minnesota State University. And the other was for educational space for the Marshall Alternative Learning Center via a sublease agreement with the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative. The costs associated with those lease agreements was just over $3 million. Under governmental accounting there's an asset and a liability that needs to be booked with those leases. It's an in and an out on the fund statements, but we need to book it at a present value. The district entered into subscription-based information technology arrangements, or we refer to as SABITAs, for IT software and electronic curriculum. The cost associated with those was approximately $169,000. A similar present value calculation is used for leases is also used for SABITAs, so that's where those numbers come from. During the year, the district also implemented GASB Statement Number 101 for compensated absences. What this standard does is it establishes new criteria for accounting and financial reporting for compensated absence liabilities. Beginning governmental activities net position was restated from just over 21 million to 16.3 million, which is a decrease of about 4.8 million. This standard requires things like PTO, vacation, or sick time that can be rolled over to the next year to be recorded as a liability on the government-wide statements, which is the front statements, not the statements that you would normally use for decision-making. But previously, the only thing that was recorded is any time off that was paid on termination. So just a little bit of a change there. The district, we want to congratulate you as well for being recognized with a Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 2024. The voters failed to approve the proposed $2 million operating levy on November 4th. And then looking ahead at the district's future, in the 2023 legislative session, the legislature approved a foundation formula increase of, they said, between basically 2 to 3%, and it has been set now at 2.75% for fiscal year 2026. That has a positive effect for school district operations and maintaining a balanced budget. This increase means that even if you didn't have any change in student numbers, you would receive an increase in your general education aid. The legislature also approved free breakfast and lunch to all K through 12 students during that 23 legislative session, and this is considered permanent right now. So the district is in the process of renovating the high school HVAC control system. Management has budgeted the total cost of the project at approximately $737,850. As of the end of the year, the district had incurred about $299,000 of direct costs relating to that project. The project is being paid for by the general fund as part of the approved long-term facility maintenance budget and will be completed during fiscal year 26. And then this graph is showing a projection of enrollment. So it's showing actual enrollment for fiscal year 24 and 25, and then projecting out for 26, 27, and 28 where those final numbers will land. It's, as we can see from the line, its future projections are reflecting a decline in enrollment. The decrease from 25 to 26 is based on current fiscal year 26 enrollment, specifically in early childhood through first grade. And then I also wanted to point out 24 to 25, the decrease is about 12 students. So the line looks pretty sharp, but that's just based on the measures I use for my axis. These numbers impact the district's funding because enrollment is what determines most of the school district's funding components. Maintaining enrollment stability and growing it continues to be one of the district's goals. And from 24 to 28, that is about 98 students of a drop, so. The following graphs that we're going to take a look at are referencing the general fund excluding transportation and operating capital. So if you're familiar with the SMART system, it's funds 1, 10, and 21. Fund balance increased from 24 to 25 by about 212,000, which was a function of revenues and other financing sources being greater than expenditures and other financing uses. The adjusted cash balance increased along with fund balances. You're going to see the orange, I don't have these labeled, The orange is your ending fund balance, and then the teal color is the adjusted cash balance. And in each year, there's going to be a difference, and that's just timing differences between accounts payable and accounts receivable. So accounts receivable, we're going to see a revenue or an increase in our fund balance, but we haven't got the cash for that yet at the end of the year. So some of those differences are why we see those spreads. They aren't equal all the time. These two graphs show the general fund revenues by source. Fiscal year 25 is on the top and 24 is on the bottom. You can see the largest source of revenue is from the state, which is the gray piece of the pie. That's consistent with every other district. State revenue is the biggest contributor into school districts. Federal sources of revenue are one of the smallest pieces, but they are the cause of the most compliance requirements. The level of federal funding is what subjects a district to a single audit requirement. If federal expenditures are over $750,000, a single audit is required. For fiscal year 26, that does go up to $1 million, but that's not going to knock you guys out of needing a single audit. So for some of our districts, it may, but here it won't. Marshall Public Schools had about $3 million in federal funding in fiscal year 25. So that would have to drop a lot, which we don't want to. So federal revenue decreased about 4%, which is about a $1.3 million decrease from fiscal year 24. Most of that is decreased COVID-19 funding. So that was all done and used up in fiscal year 24 and didn't continue. And so that decrease in the federal just shifted to kind of the state revenue when we look at percentage wise. This graph shows a 5-year history of revenues by source. Again, you can see the state funding, which is in the teal, is the largest source of revenue. The higher state funding amounts over the years have been primarily due to an increase in the basic education formula, along with an overall increase in students throughout the years. In 2024, you could see a larger jump in that state aid. There was a 4% increase in 24, and historically and kind of now it was about 2%. So that's that big jump there. And then we also had more special education aid in 25 along with that increase. In 21 through 24, you can see the higher federal revenue in the brown. So the furthest bar on the right, and that is higher 22 through 24. COVID funding ended in 24, so now we see that drop in 25. Now moving on to expenditures, these two graphs show the last 2 years, 25 on the top and 24 on the bottom again. The largest expenditure to any school should be salaries and benefits, the red and the yellow. Your job is to educate students, you need the manpower to do it, and so that's where we see the most expenditures happening. As you can see, the expenditure categories in the general fund have remained similar relative to total expenditures in the last 2 years. Your slight increase in the equipment category, it's up about 6%. So that's equipment and capital outlay. And that's going to be those right of use leases that we had for the spaces at SMSU. That's just how, function of how we need to book it. So that's the increase there. And then the next slide, this graph shows the 5-year history of expenditures by object code. The expenditures have remained consistent, again, year over year. And as you can see, the two biggest expenditures are your wages in the orange and benefits in the yellow. And those increase with either added positions, increases in pay, things like that. In 2023, the spike in your site buildings and equipment, the green color is mostly due to special education vehicles and the CTI construction costs. In 2022, other expenditures, which is the brown on the very right, increased with the implementation of GASB 87, which was that the lease standard where now we need to show rent payments, just kind of like a lease or a loan payment. And then the increase in purchase services in 2024, the blue line, that increase is due to CTI expenditures, which it was using up insurance proceeds. And our increase in site buildings and equipment in 2025 is from those right-of-use leases entered into during the year. If we look at expenditures at the areas or the programs in which most of those are attributable, the graph here would depict that. Each program or category is at the bottom, and the colors represent the last 5 years. Instructional costs, which include regular education and exceptional instruction, are and have been the majority of the district's expenditures, which we would expect. It's the cost to instruct those students. In fiscal year '23, again, here we're going to see those site buildings and equipment jump up. And that's for the CTI construction costs. Fiscal year '24, the costs are elevated for the repair of the CTI building that was covered by insurance proceeds. And now in '25 is those right of use leases. Looking at the general fund budget to actual, these tables are showing that general fund excluding transportation and operating capital like our other graphs have been. The overall change in fund balance for this fund ended up being about $1.6 million better than what was budgeted. And that's mostly due to levy revenue budgets and then general education aid. Some of those are harder to predict than others. So that was most of the reason there. Those numbers These numbers do exclude any right-of-use lease and subscription-based information, so those $3 million that I was talking about before, that's not reflected up here because it's an in and an out. So I didn't want to skew those numbers and they aren't budgeted for. The bottom data shows ending fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. The prior year 2025 budget and actual are all greater than your 8% minimum fund balance goal. And the percentage is similar to the prior year, so. And moving on from our general fund, we'll take a look at our other funds. I don't know how many fancy transitions I have in here, but the food service fund revenue for 2024-25 totaled about 2.4 million and expenditures were about 2.25 million. That resulted in a fund balance increase of roughly 146,000. The district contracts with an outside vendor, Taher, for the operation of its food service program and receives financial guarantees for the annual operating results of that program. The fund balance increased due to receiving more than anticipated earnings from investments, lunch sales, and federal revenue, partly offset by increased food and supply purchases and costs. We all know that groceries are going up, and so that translates here as well. The June 30th, 2025 food service fund balance is at $1,152,000. The community service fund, total revenues and other financing sources were about $3 million and total expenditures were $2.9 million. Total revenues and other financing sources exceeded expenditures by $48,000, resulting in an increase of the same amount in the fund balance. The main reason for that increase was positive operations in general community education and early childhood family education programs, partly offset by a deficit operations in the school readiness program. The community service fund balance at the end of the year is $951,123. In the building construction fund, total expenditures and other financing uses exceeded revenues by about $8,000. We had a transfer to the general fund to close out this building construction fund since the projects were all done. So at the end of the year, the balance in that fund is $0. The debt service fund revenues exceeded expenditures by about $486,000. That increase is primarily due to statutory levy requirements and the mandated funding of the escrow accounts. The fund balance in this fund at the end of the year is $3,432,000. The health insurance internal service fund received about $3.86 million and charged for services pertaining to your health insurance premiums from the participants and other governmental funds of the district, and incurred about $4.97 million related to insurance claims paid and administrative fees for those services, which is an approximate $1.1 million decrease. The net position in this fund at the end of the year is at a negative roughly $2 million. The OPEB revocable internal service fund incurred about a $66,000 gain on investments and investment expenses when netted together, and paid the general fund about $57,000 for employee benefits. So this increased the net position. And at the end of the year, the net position for this fund is at about $749,000. Are there any questions on any of that? All right. If not, I do want to thank Sarah, Tricia, Liana, and all of the others in the district that we get to bug. They make the process pretty easy, so. All right. Thank you,
Tamara.
everybody.
Thank you.
Move on to our consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Sarah Brink and a second by Tim to approve the consent agenda. I will call for the vote. That is approved. Next category, board reports or updates. Does anybody have any updates? Reports?
Mr. Chair, the executive committee met on November 24th and discussed in detail and in depth the shortfall in the 26-27 budget. It is unfortunate, but because of the failed referendum and to maintain a responsible and solvent budget, we recommend proceeding with the $1.8 million in program cuts and personnel cuts.
Thanks, Jeff.
We also had a finance committee meeting last week as well, reviewing the audit a little more in depth than what was done tonight, and then also discussed as well the upcoming issues relating to the failed referendum, and looking at what and will be that process and how it will come before the board likely this winter.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Moving on to our discussion items, summary of Superintendent Jeremy Williams' review. A performance review for Superintendent Jeremy Williams is now complete for the 25-26 school year. As part of the performance review process, an online evaluation was completed by the school district staff and school administration and school board. I didn't say that correctly. The evaluation consisted of 5 sections with various ratings areas in each section. A ranking scale of 1 to 4 was used, with 1 being development is needed and 4 being performance is exemplary. I will just, I won't go through each one of these, but I'll just say Jeremy had a low of 3.07 rating on instructional coaching support and a high of 3.67 on referendum leadership, with a total score of 3.32 out of 4. The ratings and process indicate that overall Superintendent Williams met and exceeded expectations in each of the categories during the 25-26 school year. The school board was pleased with his performance and the work that was done, focusing on student achievement. So thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Any questions on that? Next discussion item is the second review of policies, all of those listed. I will not list all of them. Any questions or concerns with these policies? Hearing none. Next action is our board action approval of the 24-25 financial audit, which we just heard.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Sarah Runcie and a second by Jeff to approve the financial audit for the 24-25 school year. Any further discussion?
Thank Hoffman and Brooks for their work on that, and for Tamara for sharing it.
I will call for the vote. And that is approved. And with nothing else on the agenda, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.